What is the Two Towers like the 8th time around? I'll tell you. I love Lord of the Rings. It goes back and forth with Malazan being my favorite series of all time. And this is by my count, which could be off 8th time. If anything, it's going to be more than that. I sort of was very conservative because I didn't want to like overestimate how many times I've read it. That felt kind of sleazy. I'd rather underestimate. So I think this is my 8th time around. And I just took some notes of some observations I made, some thoughts that sort of came to the forefront as I went through that. I thought I'd share them with you. So here are my thoughts on the 8th read-through of The Lord of the Rings. First thing I noticed on this read-through of Two Towers is how important a figure Boromir is, that his shadow really is long in the series, and I'll talk more about this in my Return of the King video as well, that he, even though he only is bodily, obviously, in the first Fellowship of the Ring, the first book, or first part, I know that they're written as a single whole. Please no one put in the comments. It just makes it easier if I'm just talking like this. Anyway, sometimes us Lord of the Rings fans can be a little insufferable. You know, actually, speaking of which, I am actually going to a Lord of the Rings trivia night tonight, so this video is going to help me hopefully win, I don't know, some free beer or something. It's at a brewery. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Boromir dies at the beginning, but he is the narrative thrust of wanting to protect the hobbits, that they have to go after the rest of their company, I think, for Aragorn, and also Aragorn knows that now he has to go to Minas Tirith to at least declare like what happened, or tell what happened to Boromir. It's also very interesting that Aragorn is the only one who has the exact, like knows that Boromir tried to take the ring. It's inferred later on, a couple other characters sort of figure it out, Faramir especially, but Aragorn takes that secret with him. He doesn't talk of it. It's said very specifically in the text that he doesn't. So just like how important Boromir is, both to show how powerful the ring's influence is, like it really is like that is why Frodo leaves. It's not just that like he loves his friends and doesn't want them to get hurt, but he also thinks that they will be taken by the ring, because Boromir is a very good guy in the first book and really changes that Lothlorien. And so they're afraid of that. I thought that was very, very obvious. As usual, this is true both in the movies and in the books. After Gollum comes to the Hobbits, the Hobbit chapters are a little bit on the slower side, right? Like the Dead Marshes, getting to the Black Gate, them going around the Emyn Wheel. It's hard because I know that's a dead end. We as the reader know if you've read it before, but you still have to like get them to that dead end. And it's still important in a lot of ways, and you learn a lot of things, but that's sort of always the slowest part in the book for me, is getting through that section. I, again, am always drawn, I said this in my Fellowship of the Ring video, I'm always drawn by the brevity of the battles. Helm's Deep, which is famously, I think as I speak still, the longest battle that's ever been put to screen, or put to film, I should say. It's like 52 minutes of screen time or something like that. In the book, it's like, I don't know, 2 pages or so. It's like very quick, one night. And then obviously, as book readers know, a lot of the logistics and specifics of how Helm's Deep works out is very different. It's much more important that Theoden is like himself in the books, because he rallies Rohan, and really Rohan wins because they're unified. It's actually their strength that is able to overcome the orcs, and then Uruk-hai, I should say, and obviously the help of the trees. So it's a much more natural something that came together than, I don't know, it seems a little bit more like mystical in the movies. I don't know if that's true. Maybe I'm just blowing smoke out of my ass, but that's kind of how I think. Also, I want Justice. I don't know about Justice. Just a character that I always love that doesn't get enough play in the movie is Hamma, the captain of the guard in Medusel, the hall in Edoras. He's the one who lets Gandalf in with a staff, and he does it very knowingly in the books, just as in the movie. I think they give the shout out. And then he also falls before the gate of Helm's Deep defending it. And it's a really like touching death because Hamma is a pretty big character for a couple of chapters. Another character in the movies that I think gets short shrift also is Éomer. Part of that is because those logistics I talked about in the movies. Obviously, Éomer is banished, and he is like he's the one who sort of comes instead of the fourth Marshal of the Mark. I forget his name, that actually comes with Gandalf to the end. Éomer is actually at Helm's Deep, and actually, if you remember the scene where Gimli famously, who said in the first one, like, nobody tosses a dwarf, he says, toss me. And then, they fight and give the Rohirrim time to, like, sturdy up the gate after the battering ram has hit it. It's a big, like, cool hero moment for Aragorn and Gimli. In the books, it's actually Aragorn and Éomer that are able to do that. So Éomer just has a much bigger place in the story as a whole in the books as the movies. I totally understand that. It's not like a negative. I'm just drawing comparisons. Another character that is like the coolest character in the books is Faramir. So just an incredible, impeccable view of what a man could be. And in fact, it reminded me a lot. So I was reading Silmarillion while I was reading these books. And if you don't know, the past of Numenor, which is sort of the greatest kingdom of men before they had to flee to Middle-earth, and that creates Gondor. But Numenor is this Atlantis-like tale where these great men really split into two groups, one that stayed faithful to Iluvatar, or God in this world, and those who were seduced by Sauron into trying to basically rebel against God, or rebel against the Valar. And so that struggle, ultimately in that story, Numenor is destroyed, and like the faithful ones are the ones that go off and found Gondor and its realm. The ones that Aragorn is descendant from, Elendil, etc., Isildur. Boromir and Faramir really, I think, are like personifications of the Númenórean race. Because it says the Númenórean blood is strong in both of them and in their father, but less so in Boromir than Faramir. Faramir is like fair, good, and noble. And Boromir is also noble in his way, but also harsh and like seeking for glory. And there's this strong juxtaposition, and Faramir never even struggles with the ring. In fact, if I remember, when like he figures it out, he laughs and says, "I don't want it, Frodo." I think in the movie it works to have him sort of like tempted for a little while, but I just like in the book how resolute and great Faramir is, which again pays dividends in the third one when he is in much peril. It's also much more clear in the books that Gollum or Smeagol always planned deception. In the movie, it very much seems like he is going to sort of escape, that he is going to not be his evil self anymore, that Frodo has really touched him in such a way that he will now not be beholden to the ring or deception. But in the book, it's very clear that Gollum will always try some treachery, and Frodo even says it. He says the ring, or he says, the precious is treacherous, it will hold you and twist you, and it does. Ultimately, obviously, to the ruin of Gollum, but the victory of all. Sam is just a rock star, right? Like, I love his talking about, like, oh, tell us the story of Frodo and the ring. Like, that whole thing, if you remember from the movies, is also in the book, like a continuing motif of, like, this is a hard story, but all the stories, if you're actually in them, are very, very hard. But, like, fight and push through it. And then, of course, I think potentially the best chapter in all the series is the choices of Master Samwise. It's touching, it's brutal, it's scary. It's, again, because I was reading Silmarillion, I was much more afraid of Shelob than I normally am, because I was reminded of Ungoliath, which is like the horrible spider darkness monster that actually helps Morgoth take over the Valar, or at least defeat them for a time. And Shelob is like a direct descendant of her. So it's like this, I don't know, it's just much more scary this time around. But that Sam is just like this warrior that does it. I love him being able to understand the orcs, because that's kind of fun to get the other side of all this, and them talking about the war and that they're uncertain as well. Just, it's a beautiful chapter. Absolutely loved it, and it leaves a crazy cliffhanger for the third book. So I know this was much shorter than the other one, but it's a middle book, right? We got to get to the ending. So that was my 8th reread of Two Towers. Let me know any random thoughts you have or facts or whatever. I love talking about Two Towers, so let me know in the comments below. Other than that, first in, last out.